Hey there, it's Felicia here again, Felicia Holmes, your host of Own It for Good. And today I want to talk a little bit, we're always on almost every episode probably going to be talk about the process of change, hence the title that I work from, the Own It for Good. And, it has everything to do with the transformation process, and that in order to really fulfill our potential, we have to really be able to be honest, really take a good hard look at ourselves and take brutal inventory and really own all the good and the not so good parts of our personality, our lives, our choices, and then move towards what we desire and what we know that we can be for good, which is not only the idea of being resolved and final, but also it's for our good. And if we're operating at our highest level, then that also benefits those of us around us and those around us, as well as then it ripples out to the world. So that is what we're all about and what we're going to talk about every time we come together. But I was having a conversation with some friends last night, and actually several conversations over the last couple of days around the ideas of change in general. And one of the things that is so hard about it, and in our modern lexicon, there is this term FOMO that's been coined, the fear of missing out. So that's what I want to kind of dive into a little bit more today. And this is going to be very kind of off the cuff. I do have a few notes I'm going to be referencing, but a lot of this is just going to be me kind of riffing. That's sort of where my comfort zone. So if I am a little bit scattered, I'm going to try to pull myself back to the main point and stay on topic. But we're going to talk a little bit about FOMO and the opposite of that, which is JOMO, and that is a term, a flip the script term on the fear of missing out to the joy of missing out, that Christina Crook has coined. And she has a wonderful podcast and a book also, I believe, and great website. You can go check her out, JOMO. And she really focuses on JOMO with regards to our digital lives, like really being present in the moment and the joy of missing out, and the FOMO around social media and all the impacts that has had on our lives, which I think is a very noble and very good thing to examine. But today I'm going to really apply those broader concepts to change. And as you all know, I have been through a big change myself the last couple of years that I've talked on, and that I have decided to live an alcohol-free lifestyle. And I was a daily wine drinker, and what they kind of term as gray area drinking, if you all are new to the show, that's sort of one of the things you're probably going to hear me reference quite a bit. And when you are a daily drinker, I was probably drinking about 3 drinks a night. And I really didn't have a problem with it until I did. And I'm closing in on 50, and that kind of, those choices catch up with you, the compound effect. Thank you, Darren Hardy. And that's kind of started to catch up with me, and then a few pounds started to creep on, and then as a woman, we also have hormones and menopause and all of the fun things to deal with. So I really started to look at my choices. I really started to own it and really look at, owning it for good. What would that look like? What would it look like? And so I really set out on this path to make a really big change. And I joined some coaching programs and online communities, and we examined, and I saw people that had achieved this, and they talked about how it wasn't hard. And I just couldn't imagine that. Partly because of what I started off with this episode talking about, FOMO. I was so afraid of missing out. I was so attached to having this in my daily routine. Not only is alcohol itself addictive, but I had this habit. It was just, for me, it was like coffee in the morning, which I still drink, and I have no plans right now of giving that up. But, that is really how I viewed it in my life. I just didn't see it as a problem, again, until it was. And really, when I started to own it and really look at, okay, Felicia, why can't you lose weight? And why can't you have energy? And all of this, I had to really pop the hood and take a look under at my mechanics and my brain and my habits and my choices, and really get honest. And alcohol was not doing me any favors in the weight and energy department, or sleep, or hormones, all of those things. But I was so afraid of missing out. It was such a part of my identity. I really did believe that I enjoyed it. So I was having thoughts of, life isn't going to be fun, even though I know I might feel better physically. Would I feel better mentally? I really wasn't sure. But I had enough people that I was watching and paying attention to, and listening to these conversations. And I thought, you know what? Enough people are saying that it's awesome. I think I'm really going to give it a try. So what's really behind FOMO? Well, it is a deprivation mindset, right? We think we're going to be deprived of something, and we're going, therefore, the missing out. And and just flipping that script a little bit. And I think I've touched on it in another episode too. Another way to put it, that you hear a lot in the behavior change space, is cognitive dissonance. It's when you kind of want two opposing things. I talked about that in a previous episode on, can't I have my cake and eat it too? That, is cognitive dissonance, when you want two things and they are not in alignment. But the opposite of that is cognitive resonance, or, another kind of fancy word for integrity. And Ruby Warrington, who is the author of Sober Curious, thank you, Ruby, for writing that book and coming up with that term as well. When we get curious about things, it kind of takes the fear out of it too, even when we talk about FOMO. So that's a really good word to incorporate into your vernacular and into your thought process and mindset, is, instead of missing out, what if we just got curious of what it would be like? And using words like experiment, I thank you, Annie Grace, also, who even entitles her whole program, The Alcohol Experiment. We kind of take the scariness out of it. And it doesn't even have to be a forever thing. Like, let's just play around with this lifestyle and see. And we'll worry about maybe the commitment piece later. Now, that may sound like I'm kind of contradicting myself if you listen to a few episodes. And being committed to today and to a process for a time period, that still requires a big level of commitment. And you definitely do need that. But if the words like forever are scaring you, you don't have to include a forever commitment when you're exploring habit change and behavior change. So you can be committed to a process and a goal and a challenge or experiment without it being a commitment to forever. So that's sort of the difference that I'm making. But anyway, I am going to look at my notes a little bit here and read a definition for you for cognitive resonance. So cognition itself, that first part of that statement or phrase, is the process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience of the senses. Resonance is the amplifying effect when two systems interact in harmony. So that's where I was sort of making the connection with the word integrity, which is a very important part of my approach in Own It. That is the I, and it is integrity. To live in alignment, to get those things in alignment. Well, if we are feeling FOMO or deprivation around whatever it is we want to change, and we can use my example of alcohol and what I went through personally, I had to kind of flip the script on that. What if instead of focusing on being deprived of the alcohol, I focused on what alcohol was depriving me of in what I was wanting in my life, which was more energy, hopefully a little bit of weight loss, hopefully better sleep. When I really looked at it and got honest with myself, it was that the things I was missing out on and the pain of that was driving me to seek out help and to really start thinking about this. But at the same time, I was still like, I really enjoy this, part of my life, and this is how I'm feeling connected to myself. Some of us even believe that and look at alcohol as a friend, or even food, or whatever your habit that you might be overdoing in your life is. That's like a friend. It's a good friend to you. And that's why we use words like relationship to acknowledge that deep connection that you have to a behavior that, you're like, it doesn't make total sense to you. Like, I'm doing this, but I'm not getting positive results, but yet I'm still drawn to do this. I'm compelled to do it. That really is addiction itself in a nutshell. When we're doing things, even when it's not serving us, and we find ourselves not being able to kind of help ourselves, and willpower just isn't quite enough. It may get you a little way, but willpower is a real hard thing to sustain change. So what are we to do? What's a girl to do? Or boy, if you're here. So that's where flipping the script again and looking at JOMO can really help. And this requires being intentional and being mindful with our intentional with our mindfulness. And that's where the commitment piece comes in. You've really got to be committed and renew that commitment on a daily basis, sometimes a hourly basis, secondly basis. You've got to really pay attention in the moment, especially when cravings and triggers pop up around your habit. And you've got to really look behind that and maybe sit with that. Like, what is it? Is it really this thing that I want? This glass of wine, this delicious bowl of fettuccine, binging out on Netflix, that super expensive purse that I know if I actually buy it, it might just sit in the bottom of my closet. But we're still compelled nonetheless because it's satisfying us and it's giving us something. It's kind of exhausting even just talking about it. So behind every habit and thing that our brain is driving us to do, there really is a positive intention. And it's learned somewhere along the way that, hey, she feels good when we do this. Let's keep doing this. and we don't have the dangers of life that we used to hundreds of years ago. We don't have predators out, hunting for us. So really, our predators and that predatory response in our brain often goes to work in protecting our identity. So that's where, it's all up here. It's all up here in our heads. But if we can shift gears and really dig into, okay, this behavior, I say that I want these things over here. This is what integrity would look like for me, to have more, in my case, have more energy, better sleep, taking better physical care of myself, not only doing all of the healthy diet changes and eating kale and fruit and maybe even experimenting with plant-based, which I've done a lot this past year, like doing all of these things, but then here I am counter or undoing it by a late night binge or a stress eating situation, where it used to be maybe sitting on the couch and drinking a few glasses of wine. So how do we shift gears? How do we stay in the JOMO state and not the FOMO state? Well, number one, we sort of really have to journal, talk, whatever journaling looks like for you. I'm a verbal processor, so podcasts are my jam, talking with people after I've listened to a podcast, having a guided journal where it's really asking me some specific questions that set my brain in a good, help my brain light up. I'm not very good myself with an empty page, but whatever works for you. But really asking yourself some of these questions instead of getting caught up in your current identity of, oh, I can't do that, I'm good, and then catastrophizing over what may or may not happen if you quit this thing, the fear side of it. But let's flip to the joy side of it. And now, if I miss out on this habit that I'm doing, then I'm no longer depriving myself of all the things that I say that I want. Hence, we start to come into alignment by being mindful and intentional and focusing consistently on a daily basis, and even in the small moments of, wow, I stayed up last night, at 11 o'clock, and my son from college called, and I was able to have a conversation that not only was I fully engaged in at the moment, not annoyed that he called that late, not woken up from my maybe passing out with the glass of wine in my hand, but I'm really fully engaged in that, like really paying attention on a very regular, mindful basis of all of the new experiences that you're having along with the new behavior change. So focusing, redirecting your FOMO into JOMO. And in the recovery world, we call this the sort of the pink cloud, when it's that state of joy that comes with all of these, this new lifestyle. But you can have this with anything, like really habit change when it's a deep entrenched habit. It's all recovery in my book. And some people may not like that word, so use whatever word you like. We're talking about semantics here. So I'm going to read a quote just to go back to Miss Lovely Ruby Warrington and her book Sober Curious, and the idea of cognitive resonance that I kind of pulled from and this conversation come from. It could be said that living with integrity, meaning seeking to align your every thought, word, and deed, is what brings cognitive resonance. That is, the sense of balance and calm that comes from aligning our thoughts and deeds, and the antidote to the turmoil of cognitive dissonance. All the spiritual gurus will also tell you that this is the fast track to inner peace, lasting confidence, and ultimate well-being. Wow, I couldn't have said it better myself. So when my friend pointed this quote out to me, I thought, wow, in this space, again, with habit change, we talk a lot about cognitive dissonance and how we have to, what do we do about this divided mind? But I really like taking this approach from the other side of like, how do we, let's achieve, let's focus on what we get. We get integrity, we get cognitive resonance. Like, who doesn't want a sense of balance and calm that comes from aligning our thoughts and is the antidote to turmoil? That's what we really want to deprive ourselves from. We want to deprive ourselves from the turmoil of cognitive dissonance. But in order to do that, that does take slowing down in your life enough to be mindful when these triggers and these automated systems kick in, because that's really what they are. It's, it's programming. When it's wine o'clock, and you're like, well, it's time for the wine. And everywhere in our society, it's encouraged. That's a hard battle to fight without some really good tools in your tool belt. So I would propose that JOMO versus FOMO, and focusing on what you get and depriving yourself from what you don't want is the way to go. Is a very powerful tool. But you've really got to be committed to this because it takes a lot of slowing down and mindfulness and thought in really in the moments when you're, and or even if you save it for the end of the day or in your morning routine, like really take time to reflect. What did my day look like yesterday? What is my day looking like today? Are there things that I'm doing differently now, or that I'm experiencing life in this new way that wouldn't have happened prior when I was doing this XYZ behavior or habit? That is what gets you to the point of it being more on a new autopilot, because our brain is like a Pac-Man looking for rewards. So this is a way to keep feeding it. This is why we're doing this thing, and it's a good thing, and we like it, and it's creating all these good results in our lives. Because as humans, the other thing that happens, and the reason why this takes intention, is that there are some very good systems in place from an evolutionary standpoint with the mind that kick in. Complacency and fading effect bias. And William Porter, in his book Alcohol Explained, talks about this quite a bit. And it's what allows us to continue living even when we've had a traumatic event. Why women can go through the pain of childbirth multiple times, because they kind of forget how painful it was, and then they get back to normal life. And even when we go through big changes, it may have been hard and we were doing some of the work when we got there, but then we kind of quit doing the work because we get used to our new normal. It's true. Just like, your kids grow incrementally every day, and before you know it, but you haven't been watching it every day, unless you're one of those moms that maybe pays attention and does a good, photography and really is mindful about it. Like, wow, you've really grown. That's what can happen to us in our lives too. We quickly get into the new normal and then we forget how bad it was. So this idea of staying mindful and avoiding complacency and constantly going, wow, my new normal is amazing. I'm so glad that I, really did the work of making this change. I read every movie. Look at me talk, listen to me talk. Well, talk about reading. I mean, I can read books now where before my mind could not stay focused. I was too foggy. Like, I love to read. That was something I loved to do as a child. You could always find, if you couldn't find me, go look in a corner in a chair. That's where I was. Um, oh, I have good memories of that. Anyway, but I have that back. I have myself back, and so my love for reading never went away, but my capacity because of my habits did. And so now I have that back. So I celebrate that on a regular basis. I revisit all of what my new life brings me and my new choices and my new autopilot versus what I used to do to avoid complacency. And again, that thing coming in, especially if I'm out at a social event and somebody says a glass of wine, and my brain might think, oh, you can totally, do that. Like, I don't want to even flirt with that in my life anymore because my life is so good now and I enjoy it so much. I don't want to mess with that at all. And I'm working on doing that in my food relationship now too, and in the weight loss process of really focusing on all the things that if I go on autopilot and eat when I'm stressed or eat more than I should at a meal or past fullness or past satisfaction, I'm depriving myself of feeling good the next day. I'm depriving. So anyway, I'm going up against my sort of 30-minute limit that I want to keep these podcasts to, and I really, again, appreciate you tuning in with me. I hope that you really take some time yourself to think about these concepts that we've talked about, FOMO or the fear of missing out, and deprivation, to JOMO and integrity that comes with that, and really living into harmony and being integrated with what we say we want and our actions lining up with that. Like, isn't that an awesome place to be? I'm going to read this quote one more time just because it's so good. It could be said that living with integrity, meaning seeking to align your every thought, word, and deed, is what breeds cognitive resonance. And that is the sense of balance and calm that comes from aligning our thoughts and deeds, and the antidote to the turmoil of cognitive dissonance. All the spiritual gurus will also tell you that this is the fast track to inner peace, lasting confidence, and the ultimate well-being. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode and these concepts. I'd love to hear feedback. I'd love to get some good ratings on this podcast if you like it, or if you're watching this on YouTube. I would really appreciate it if you shared it with friends, left any comments. I'm very new to this, and so I will take any constructive feedback that you have. I know that I could be putting cool graphics up here and putting a lot more in my notes and all of those things. So know that I am working on those things. It's just me and if you're watching on video, my flamingos in my home office, just getting it done, because I want to have JOMO around even getting a podcast done. I am tired of depriving myself of the feeling that, oh, you should be doing more. I'm doing it as, even if it's imperfect as it is. I'm just getting it done. I've learned so much that I just want to share with as many people as I can. And if even one woman or man finds this and listens to it and they resonate with what I'm saying, and it helps them and helps you in your journey, then that's everything to me. So I couldn't have gotten to where I am, and I won't be able to get where I'm going without other people being willing to do this as well, because this is how I learn. I learn by listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos and reading books and reflecting and thinking. So, and sometimes I might have heard something multiple ways, but then I hear it that one time, and then the way that person says it, and something clicks. So I hope that I can help that happened for somebody else and pay it forward. And I'm owning it for good. So I hope you are too. And tell me what it is that you are trying to own for good. All right. Talk to you next time.